Signing off.
Thanks for your help.
Okay.
We had some technical difficulties.
So we're live?
We are live.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Environment Subcommittee meeting. We have 3 bills to review, HB 25, HB 277, and HB 338. So without further ado, I will ask Kristen to remind us what HB 25 does. And I guess there are a couple of technical amendments. So
Sure. So, House Bill 25 is an MDE departmental bill, and it's establishing the reservoir augmentation permit, which would authorize MDE to regulate water reuse systems for the planned placement of treated wastewater into surface water reservoirs that serve as sources for drinking water treatment. This bill is building on a pilot program that was established in 2023. The bill also includes a provision to extend the termination date of that pilot program by 2 years. So the pilot program, which has an active permit under, that would expire June 30th or June in 2030 as opposed to 2028. And as you mentioned, there are a couple technical amendments. We can get to those at the end or now, whenever you'd like.
yeah, why don't we just see if anyone has any questions about it. There was no opposition. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Opposition.
So again, as Kristen said, this is building on a pilot project. And so, MDE would, has to set up regulations for what's called officially reservoir augmentation, but that deals with, reuse of I guess water that, let's see.
Wastewater that's been
Wastewater,
treated.
thank you.
It'll be treated before
Yeah.
it's placed into the reservoir, and then again, it would go through the drinking water treatment process.
Right.
And MDE will be coming up with the standards for for treatment, et cetera, by regulation.
Right. And so I guess MDE has to, in their regulations, they will require anyone who submits an application for this to show that it's at least the same quality of drinking water as other drinking water standards in the state. So it'll the wastewater will first get, as you said, Kristen, treated as wastewater, and then it would be transferred into reservoirs, et cetera, for regular treatment by the jurisdiction for it to become acceptable as drinking water. So Delegate Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am curious, something that's never been 100% clear to me. How is the the discharge permitting process different than this bill?
The permit discharge process, you mean for wastewater that comes from a treatment plant?
I guess from industrial or other sources. So those letters we get from MDE that to each district representative telling us, there's a permit. We're issuing a permit for this company to let loose waste in this location. You know what I'm talking about? Am I
Right.
talking?
Yes.
Am I being crazy?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not the only one who gets those letters.
No. Yeah.
I guess I just want to understand why we need legislation if we already have a process for getting permission for waste discharge.
Yeah. Is there anyone? I guess there's no one from MDE on the call. Is that right?
Mr. Chair, I
Yeah.
was the floor leader on this bill when we passed the pilot project.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not MDE, but so the reason I think that it needs to be different is that this is reclaimed water. So this isn't just water that runs into the rivers or, runs into streams and then, goes into the reservoir. This is water. It's actually gray water that is treated. It's a special process. And I was trying to find it in the bill. That part I don't remember, but it's a newish process that we did a pilot project in Westminster, authorized that, and it was to be able for them to augment their water supply. But the water's actually treated twice. So the answer to your question, I think Delegate Lewis, the answer to your question, and I'm not from MDE, is that because we're using water that's already, it's gray water.
Yeah, it's been treated once already.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Delegate Foley. Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kristen, now that I remember the issue last year with Westminster. And didn't we have to vote on that bill last year with Westminster to get them to the point that where they are today, which is what we're trying to move forward with?
It was a couple years ago. This was in 2023, but yes, this is building on that pilot program. And part of that, a bill I think had directed MDE to, come back to the legislature to recommend whether there should be, if they were to recommend a permanent program. And
So
they're having success with this current pilot project that they want to continue the permit.
Okay, so the project is work. I was trying to say there was no previous legislation, but I do remember the Westminster thing. And I was just trying to dig out what that old bill number was so we could see, what we all talked about back 2 years ago. I said, like Delegate Foley said, she led the 4 challenge, and I'm just trying to put my head together.
MDE's testimony included the bill number, Senate Bill 407 of 2023. I can't remember if there was a House cross file either. I don't have that. Just didn't write that down.
Okay. That answers me. Thank you.
Okay. Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm sorry I don't have the bill up in front of me. So does this bill have a sunset in it, or is it open-ended?
This bill does not have a termination provision. It extends the termination provision on the pilot program by 2 years. But this permit program is intended to be permanent.
Okay, so but then there is an end to the pilot program. It's an extension, and that comes to an end. But
Well, it's going to basically roll in the provisions of the pilot program into the new program, the permanent program. But because there's a permit currently issued under the pilot program, they want to continue that Westminster project under that permit. And then I'm not sure what the terms of I think the term of the permit could be up to 5 years. So it would eventually go from the pilot program to this permanent program in MDE.
okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what areas is this affecting? I mean, how many locations or reservoirs is this going to deal with?
Kristen, am I right in saying potentially statewide? So it could be any jurisdiction that provides drinking water that was interested in using this.
I mean, this is very important, probably to Loch Raven and things like that in that area.
Yeah, Kristen, is it right that?
Right now, I think the fiscal note was envisioning one permit being issued. And I can't remember if that was an MVA's testimony. The bill will apply statewide, but where the department is anticipating one permit at this time. I just got to figure out where that was.
Delegate Otto, while Kristen looks for that, does that answer your question? I mean, it again is technically statewide, I guess.
Well, no, it doesn't answer my question, but I am concerned about who it affects and where it does. And I'm certainly comfortable that it's not going to affect my district.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Sure. I guess it's jurisdictions that have.
I want those folks to have notice of what is being transpired here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just authorizing. So I guess if there is a county or municipality that is facing a scarcity of potable water,
Yeah.
drinking water specifically, then this is an option that they could consider. But it's just authorizing. No one would be required to do this.
Yeah,
Well,
and
my
sorry.
concern is too, we've had other well, in the country, we've had other areas that had gray water that was designated for certain purposes, and the piping was not correct, and it went into potable water into the households. I mean, that's documented things, and well, I think it's California actually, but not that I want to be Californian, but by any stretch of imagination, but I just want to have people to
The
be informed and know what's happening with the water sources.
So just on that point, the bill does apply current public participation permit, environmental permit, public participation requirements to this new permit. And it applied to the pilot program permit as well. So there are provisions in the bill that do relate to public notice.
But there's not been any problems with the,
I have not heard of any problems with the current pilot program now.
yeah. And that just affected Westminster at this point in
At
time?
this point, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, California, I mean, MDE's testimony says that it says many other states, but it just lists says such as California and Texas having, and I guess where Texas is, I'm sure water is more scarce there, have been using water reuse technology for decades. But Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make those points. I think this is about, this is not Delegate Otto. As I read this bill, it's setting up a permitting process, as the chair said, for those jurisdictions that want to do this. So right now, there's not a permitting process to take this gray water and do this process to make it potable and then put it into the reservoir. So they want a permitting process so they can sign off on the places that want to do it. And then the permits last for 5 years and they have to be renewed. And I would assume that would require re-permitting at that point, or, reissuing the permit. So I, for one, am fairly confident that this is pretty safe. And actually, my recollection is that this water is filtered twice and therefore probably is cleaner than the water that comes straight out of the reservoir. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah. Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for fun, guys, in 2023, this was House Bill 848, and we voted 22-1 in this committee to move the bill forward, and it hit the floor, and it was 133-1.
Okay.
There's
Good
your
to
man.
know. Okay.
And it was a Republican-sponsored bill.
It was a Republican-sponsored bill, is correct.
Who was the one?
Rose from Frederick County.
No. Okay. Other questions about this bill? Delegate Lehman?
Well, Mr. Chair, I don't have a question, but I'm willing to make a motion favorable if you want to entertain a motion.
Don't
Sure.
forget the 2 technical amendments.
Oh, right. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so hold that thought, Delegate Foley. I mean, Delegate Lehman, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I move the bill favorable with the 2
yes.
technical amendments.
Yes. Delegate Otto, you still have your hand up.
I raised it again. I was just interested in I think a sunset would be appropriate, that we have another opportunity to revisit it in 5 years. You say the permit would be 5 years? Can we?
Yeah, I think it could be up to 5 years. I'd say a permit for a term no longer than, the department's prohibited from issuing a reservoir augmentation permit for a term longer than 5 years. So yeah, up to 5 years.
So can we put a sunset on the bill at 5 years and have, our successors, revisit it and see how it's working?
We could, I think, I mean, all right, but first,
I
Delgado,
don't
you
want to
you
hold
wanna
it
jump in
back.
again?
I think I'm comfortable with it.
You're comfortable with the bill as is?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But I do think we need to have some, a relook at it at some point in time.
Well, I guess what we can do is certainly ask for, it's not in the bill, but we can certainly ask MDE to, provide updates to the committee about implementation. I'm sure minimum, be interested to know as to whether any jurisdiction has applied for permits under this, and if so, how it's being implemented. I mean, certainly I can make that request. We can make that
Yeah,
request to MDE.
I'm comfortable with that if it
Okay.
doesn't hold the bill back. I'm good with it.
Okay, thank you, Delgado. All right, so Kristen, let's get to the technical amendments. Hopefully approve those, and then Delegate Lehman has moved the bill, so we'll need a second for it, but let's take up the amendments first.
Sure. So these are technical amendments just intended to correct language in the bill. On page 40 and line 30, there's a reference to a potable reuse permit, and it's just going to up that language to the reservoir augmentation permit, which is the topic of the bill. It just looks like they used language from the pilot program inadvertently. And
Okay,
then-
any
and then-
questions about that? That amendment? Okay, amendment number 2?
And then on page 6 in line 27, these provisions deal with directing that that the department adopt a reasonable application fee and an amount to cover the cost of issuing and administrating the permits. It says there's a word that says an amount designated to cover, but the department intended that to say in an amount designed to cover. So we would be striking designated and updating that with the term designed.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move the amendments.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Amendments passed, so we have a motion. Delegate Lehman, is it fair to say you're moving now the bill as amended?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I make a
Okay.
motion to move the bill as amended.
Second.
Great. Okay, any last questions about this bill? Hearing none, all those in favor of the bill as amended say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, bill passes. Thank you. All right, House Bill 277, which we heard today. Delegate Ruth, again, we just heard it a few hours ago, but could you summarize for us what your bill would do?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And so basically, as the bill that passed last year, that passed the House did, it requires new construction where water fountains are already required under the International Plumbing Code to also install a water bottle filling station. There are combination units available, so it's a pretty low barrier. They are potentially a few $100s more. But actually, the architects had said to me that in most cases the cost would not be adding significantly to the cost of the building, and so it also this year we added renovations in the sense that if a building is being renovated and a water fountain is being replaced as a part of that renovation, that it would also have to include a water bottle filling station, and if like there's an addition, an extra wing added or something, then that would require, like, if the International Plumbing Code specifies, like, per the capacity of the building, how many are required. So if an extra wing would bump it up to where there's another water fountain required, then in that case, they would be required to add a water bottle filling station. So it should be a low barrier, really easy way to accomplish this. And the American Heart Association had asked for the addition of renovations.
Okay, and Delegate Ruth, just to follow up on what you said, I think I understand correctly that what's a sort of a covered renovation under the bill would be as determined under the plumbing code. So if a certain amount of work is being done, the plumbing code would be the sort of say whether um, a drinking fountain is required to be installed per that renovation.
Not exactly. Not
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
So the International Plumbing Code just specifies for different types of buildings what water fountains and other plumbing fixtures are required. So, for example, if it's if it's a school, then it's required to have a certain number of and I have it here. So let's say places of, let's see, passenger terminals and transportation facilities are required to have one water fountain per 1,000 in capacity. So they basically, however many people can fit into that building, then they have to install one water fountain for that. There's nothing in here that defines a renovation, but we did want to try to um, do significant renovations. But when in looking into it, I thought that was a hard thing to try to define what a significant renovation is. So this seemed like an easy way to do it, where if you're adding a wing on, which adds, say, another capacity of 1,000 people, then that wing would be required to have a water fountain. And so in that case, they would be required to also install a water bottle filling station. And or if there's a water fountain and they're like tearing that part down and rebuilding it, that they would that they're going to have to replace the water fountain anyway, that they would be required to add a water bottle filling station. And again, there are combination units for these, so it's not complex. Now, I understand that there may be the plumbing it's already in the building is not sufficient for the larger unit, and that some plumbing changes may be required. And, certainly I think one of the questions that I heard come up was, what if you're just replacing the water fountain, a one-to-one replacement, and not replacing the pipes, not doing any other construction? Would you have to replace it then? I would have to talk to my cross-file sponsor as well, but I certainly don't think that we want to then force the builder or the owner of the building to like tear up the plumbing just to change the water fountain, if all they're doing is changing the water fountain. But if they're going in and doing a renovation where they're going to be touching the plumbing anyway, then it should be pretty easy to do.
Okay. And just for the subcommittee's benefit, I think Delegate Ruth, you said you wanted to do some follow-up over the next few days about the bill, so we won't be entertaining any motion on the bill today, potentially at like the next meeting. So we just want to discuss the bill, answer any questions about it.
Yes, that's correct. And I see Tom Ballantyne is on here, and also I thought I saw Laura Hale get on. She's with the American Heart Association, but she seems to have dropped off.
I had to take her off because she's not on my advocates list and I wasn't contacted. So I didn't know who she was.
Margie, you can, I mean, and
I think I don't know if she's still in the waiting room. I could look, but
yeah,
it's
no,
been clear.
Delegate Ruth had contacted
I
me,
need to
so
know who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize. I reached out to Eric Galley and he I think invited her because he couldn't make it on.
Okay. Well, I'll see if I can get to the waiting room, but
Okay.
So I took her out, and there's somebody else under some other odd name in the waiting room, and I'm not letting them in because it's an odd
Okay.
name.
No, those are the rules.
Yep.
So
Okay.
Sorry.
So, Mr. Chair, how do you want to proceed on this? I'd certainly be interested in hearing Tom's concerns from NAOP, and I know you have some hands up as well. And so how do you?
Yeah, we'll defer if Tom wants to discuss his concerns, that's fine. But let's get to the questions first. Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think Delegate Ruth knows, and I said this in the hearing, I really like this bill. I think this is a really good bill. This is the kind of thing that we should be doing here. But I did raise in the hearing the question about the water coolers, and Delegate Ruth, if you could do a little research on that and find that out, if that, I just think the bill should be clear. Either it covers it or it doesn't cover it. Either water coolers meet the criteria or they don't. I don't care if you take it out, but I think you should put some clarity in the bill. So that's one comment. And the other, if we don't have the Heart Association person on here, maybe you know, Delegate Ruth, why does the Heart Association care about this? That might be a dumb question, but my mother told me there are no dumb questions. So why does the Heart Association care about this?
So they care about it because of the availability of fresh water, and they gave testimony this afternoon about the importance of having fresh water widely available, particularly to people's health.
So just the freshwater part. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think they were particularly interested in the renovations because that then would make it even more widely available. They just want to
Right.
see fresh water available everywhere.
Right. I missed part of this hearing, so I apologize. But
I understand
you.
we're all in and out of these hearings with our own bill here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where do I start? I think this bill has some promise because it does do things, and I do want to see these plastic bottles disappear. But I want it to be good potable water. I guess we're going to, after the last bill, we're going to have gray water in it, so we're going to fill them with. But I am interested in the concerns of Mr. Ballantyne and his organization, and I think you've done a good job. The sponsor has done a good job not creating difficult mandates. It's something that we can work with. So I just want to be sure that's happening. I don't like mandating anything, but I think you worked well with the bill, Delegate Ruth, and
Thank you, Delegate.
No, yeah, thank you, Delegate Otto. And with that, Tom, do you want to weigh in?
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to do that. And I'll start by recognizing that this bill was in last year. I think we misread it as applying only to state buildings. And the bill hearing happened to be on a Monday, which is when our legislative committee meets. So I think that was a fastball right by the knees that we missed. So apologies for that. We put in our members build, own, manage commercial real estate of all kinds. And we do put in a lot of bottle filling stations. We put in other kinds of fixtures too. And Delegate Ruth did refer to my written testimony, which you all should have several times, but kitchens, bathrooms, other sorts of functional rooms. And we're interested in putting in bottle filling stations in strategic locations where they're going to be used and used frequently. The plumbing code allows for them to be installed, but doesn't require them to be installed in every location. And sometimes, especially in older buildings, we're concerned about the functionality of the space because once this goes in, it does have to be ADA compliant. We need floor room. We're somewhat concerned about the cost of implementation is small, but sort of incremental. And there are some operational and maintenance considerations that go along with it that we'd like to be able to decide when and where to implement those things. And the kind of the implementation timetable and when it's required created some concerns for us. And you all have in your inboxes a kind of a reprint of the bill that I sent at 5 o'clock today after viewing the bill hearing. And our approach to this would be to require it in public use areas so that interior tenant spaces are customized to the needs of the tenants and can, in many cases, they'll have a full kitchen or maybe a small gymnasium, and they'll have water bottle filling stations and other kinds of fixtures in those locations, but it can be customized for their needs. So our approach in the reprint was to add a definition of major renovation and tie that back to what's in the finance and procurement article. Define public use area, which is a definition that comes right out of the building code. It's consistent with the examples given during the public testimony. And then the implementation date here in the bill is introduced is October 1st, 2025. And the way that we propose to change that would be to apply it to building permits that they're applied for after the regulations are finalized by the Department of Labor, and to keep this in the public use areas of the building where there's more foot traffic, where they're going to be used more often, and then allow discretion for the building owners and the tenants to work on the interior spaces.
Okay, yeah, Delco Group.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Tom, for clarifying that. That really is helpful. When you say tenants, it's hard for me because I think of tenants like residential tenants, like apartments. But I'm not sure that's what you mean, because apartments are not required to install water fountains.
Right. I think an apartment will have its own suite of appliances and plumbing fixtures based on the code. And I'm not referring to residential occupations or uses at all. I'm only referring to commercial, industrial, and other kinds of, retail uses.
Okay, so
Tenant, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yep.
oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Chair, is it okay if I continue to ask?
Oh, sure. All right. Please do.
Thank you so much. So, would that include like office spaces, things like that?
Sure.
And-
So when I refer to a tenant space, I mean, an interior office suite is built out by our members to meet the needs of the organization that's leasing the space. And most of them have full kitchens, right? Or at least a, kitchenette of some kind, a lunchroom. And
Right.
there are ways to customize it to meet the needs of the group that's renting the space.
So, I mean, I certainly see how if there's a kitchen available, these wouldn't be needed because you could just fill it. But I'm not sure if the kitchen would have the same filtered water in it that the water bottle filling stations have. What the options there would be.
Well, I can assure you we're not serving anyone gray water.
Yeah, it's unfortunate this came right after the other bill.
Don't worry, Delegate Otto. There's no gray water coming out of our faucets. But the public use areas of the building would have the bottle filling stations and would be in the interior. So a kitchen may have a refrigerator with water dispenser or something similar.
So I did look at your markup, and I think the definition of major renovation, maybe I'd be okay with that, except that it says the heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, electrical, and plumbing systems are to be replaced. So I could see renovations where not all of those are being replaced, where we would want these to be added. So that seems a little broad. I mean, to say this only applies to those situations where the building shell is to be reused for the new construction. The heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, electrical, and plumbing systems are to be replaced, and the scope of the renovation is 7,500 feet or greater. So I'm certainly open to a definition of significant renovation, but that one seems too big.
I just lifted that from finance and procurement.
Yeah, no, I get that, but it doesn't seem like it's the right one.
There is another definition in the International Building Code that's used for building code purposes in the local jurisdictions.
And the other thing is exempting all of the non-public spaces. I wonder, though, if that's going to exempt some places that we would want these, like, for example, schools. Are they considered public spaces or not? Because they're generally pretty locked down. And I think schools are one place where we really, want to make sure that we have them. Educational facilities are required to have 1 per 100. Anyway, we can talk about this offline. I don't want to take up too much of the committee's time with this. But I think certainly open to talking, and probably want to loop in the Senate sponsor as well.
Delegate Ruth, oh, she's here now. So I've been going back and forth with Laura Hale, and I can admit her now.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
We
Margie.
were having issues.
I'm sorry to have caused.
Well, I will send the procedures to Eric Galley again.
Hello, I am so sorry.
So Laura, just so you know, you're not allowed to speak unless someone asks you a question. You have to stay off.
Understood. Understood.
Okay, so Delegate Ruth and Tom, if you want to continue the conversation, between now and next week.
So, Mr. Chair, I think Delegate Foley had a question.
Yeah,
and
I had a,
wanna ask
yeah, go ahead,
Laura.
Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is a procedural one. I'm confused. So Mr. Ballantyne submitted testimony. It was written testimony. It wasn't favorable with amendments. It was unfavorable. So I'm not exactly sure what we're doing here in terms of working on this bill. I'm glad that you're going to work on it offline, but I just think that because the sponsor's here and she's a member of the committee, we could have that conversation. But going forward, when we don't have sponsors here, I'm just not sure what the process is for.
Yeah, Delegate Foley, the process would be if there is, certainly if an advocate has requested to be able to be on the Zoom call, through Margie, then we let them in. And only if a committee member asks for the advocate's input can they chime in. So in this case, Delegate Ruth asked Tom for his feedback. So that's why it was perfectly fine for him to do that. If there's, if it's a situation where, like in most cases where we don't have the bill sponsor as a subcommittee member, it would only be if a committee member wanted someone to speak and asked them to specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. I do have, Kristen, question for you as a follow-up to something that Tom mentioned about sort of the effective date of the requirements under the bill. The bill does say that Department of Labor shall adopt regulations to carry the provisions of the subtitle. Is it generally assumed that when that's in the bill that it's only after the regulations are promulgated that sort of the provisions of the bill as reflected in the regulations would go into effect?
I mean, it depends how it's drafted. I would say not in this case. I think you would want to maybe tighten that up. I think it takes at least 94 days at a minimum for a department to go through the regulation process. So, you might want to think about that as far as the effective date of when these water bottle filling stations would be required.
Okay.
To ensure that the labor has enough time to adopt those implementing regulations.
Sure. Okay, Delegate Ruth.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I did want to ask Laura Hale a couple questions about this conversation, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Laura, did you hear any of the conversation? I wasn't sure.
I'm so sorry I got kicked off and wasn't able to.
No worries. I just didn't want to take up time summarizing it if you'd already been able to listen in. So, Mr. Ballantyne is here from NAIOP, and I don't know if you had seen their testimony. They had submitted unfavorable testimony, and so he's sent the committee a marked up copy of the bill. They're concerned about, for example, things like industrial spaces, office spaces, where they have tenants that maybe have a kitchen where a water bottle refill station might not be needed. And they are looking to make sure that it's not required in situations where it wouldn't really be all that helpful to have it. And so the three things I think that his markup does, the first one is requires it in in public spaces only, is that right? Public spaces only, as opposed to non-public spaces. The second thing is it adds a definition of major renovation, which is already in code, but I'm concerned about that definition because it includes like basically a complete renovation, which is more than what we're looking at. And then changing the effective date. So I know that your concern was the wide availability of water. So I guess the first question is, do you know if limiting it to public spaces only would exempt schools or
You
things
know,
like that?
You know, I don't, I'm not sure that it would. I think we need to be clear in that, is to make sure that we don't exempt schools out, because that's really, where we can see that main access to water being so important for health on it. And I think we need to clarify. I'm not 100% sure on.
Okay, thank you. I know you're not an expert on the plumbing code, but I didn't know how much you had looked into this before, you reached out to me. And I assume, and are you okay with some amendments limiting it to more significant renovations as long as we're,
Yes, as long as we're really looking at, if we're touching the plumbing and really dealing, especially with schools as our big space for this, as long as they're included for the major renovations, we're very flexible in that understanding.
okay, thank you. And you're okay with changing the effective date to make sure the regulations have time to go into effect?
Of course, we can be flexible.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chair, is it okay if I call on Mr. Valentine?
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Valentine, did you want to add anything?
I did. Thank you for calling on me. Going back to the question of implementation timeline, just please be cognizant of the fact that especially in new construction and major renovations, there'll be construction drawings that will be prepared well in advance of the work for many projects. So the plumbing schematics will be done. So just a note about lead time.
Would that be done before the contract is signed or after the contract is signed?
It's a building permit. The timing is, the contract would be signed well in advance, maybe years
Okay, because this
or months.
doesn't apply. It says it doesn't apply to any buildings for which a contract is signed before a certain date.
The recommendation that I put forward was to base it on building permit application so that it applies to work performed under a building permit applied for before the effective date of the regulation.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Last call for any questions about this bill, which again, we're appreciate all the good discussion and, we again won't entertain a motion at this meeting, potentially a future meeting. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Delegate Lehman's bill, which we also heard today, and very similar to a bill we approved last year. But Delegate Lehman, if you could, summarize what your bill does.
Absolutely, and I thank you, Mr. Chair. So the bill, as I said in committee today, is back from last year. We did pass it in A&T in the full House, and it just says that state employees or contractors, when they are collecting, yard waste, so grass clippings, tree limbs, and the like, last year's bill only said that they could no longer collect yard waste in single-use plastic bags. This year's bill says that, and then what they would have to do is collect that waste in compostable bags or containers that are not being disposed of, so that are emptied into something else, but not disposed of. And then this year we add a component where we say that yard waste, when it is taken away, has to be taken now to composting facilities or wood recycling facilities or state facilities that have an on-site capacity to create either mulch or enriched soil. And MDE said that would not be a problem. There are enough of those facilities spread around the state. They are mostly county facilities, but there are enough of them that it won't be a hardship. And so there was no opposition, as I said, and there's virtually no fiscal note. The fiscal note says that the bill is not anticipated to affect local government. At the state level, it could increase state expenditures for some state entities, but any such increase would not be significant. And then, of course, there'd be no effect on revenues either. So MDE is supportive, and DNR, just like last year, is supportive, but asked for that exemption where if there are noxious weeds or noxious or invasive species involved, they have this process, and we checked it out scientifically. Apparently, you need to put those in black plastic bags in particular, so the seeds don't spread, and these things, especially invasive species, can't somehow propagate. So, yep, that's the bill, and
Okay, sounds
that
good.
summarizes it.
Thank you. Any questions? Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is somewhat different than last year's bill. Is that correct?
Yes, the difference is that it adds the ban on single-use plastic yard waste bags is the same, but then it adds a second piece which now says that when this yard waste is hauled away, it specifies what types of facilities that the yard waste has to be taken to. In other words, we're trying to say to state agencies, don't haul this yard waste off to a landfill. And so what it says specifically is that this yard waste, again, collected only from state land, has to either go to an organics recycling facility, a natural wood waste recycling facility, or a state facility that on site is creating either mulch or enriched soil from that yard waste. And the agencies say there are plenty of those. I even have a map that shows where they all are statewide, that it wouldn't be a hardship. They wouldn't be going out of the way to find these facilities, and the facilities that exist do have the capacity to handle this yard waste.
Well, I'd be interested. I'll find out about the map. That's a concern. But,
Sure, happy to share that.
And
Yeah, because if I could just share that, I did talk, when we came up with this idea, talked to a couple of colleagues who mentioned that if you needed language to ensure that taking this yard waste to any of those three types of facilities would be a hardship, in other words, it would, the state agency would spend more money, taking that waste further away, spend more money on gas, and we didn't want to create a situation where there were trucks on the road and with the emissions and all of that, and undo what we're trying to do, or create unintended consequences, as we like to say. And so the people I talked to said, well, if that comes up, you could put in a limitation that came from somebody's compost bill from a few years ago, and put like a limited number of miles that the state, would or could travel to go to a facility. If it's further than that, then they don't have to comply. But the state said, no, really, this should not be a problem. There are enough of these facilities around the state of Maryland that we don't see that being an issue at all. But I will absolutely be happy to share that map.
so the definition
I'm asking my
of,
staff, I'm looking at my staff because I was thinking we might have submitted it as part of my testimony, but I'm not sure that we.
so disposable yard waste. We talking about grass clippings,
That's
leaves,
that's exactly right. There is.
branches that fall off in a storm, or
Absolutely. Let me just really briefly, in the definition section, yard waste means organic plant waste derived from gardening, landscaping, and tree trimming activities. That's exactly how it's defined in the bill, Delegate Otto.
so we pull the weeds and they're out there. That's
Yep.
part-
Plants, grass, gardening, landscaping, tree trimming. And then there is that provision, of course, in there that says if it is certain types of, noxious weeds or invasive species, that is where there's the exception, and that not just can, but that is their practice. DNR raised this issue that is their practice to put that kind of waste in. They specified black plastic bags because I guess the term they used is kind of funny in their testimony. It says by putting it in black plastic bags because they heat up in the sun, that literally they cook or they bake these plants that they do not want spreading and propagating. And so, they raised that issue last year and we accepted that amendment. So this year the bill included that language in it.
And you keep the rhizomes and the seed heads in place.
Yes, thank you to the farmer on the subcommittee, because it's been a long time since I've taken, biology or botany. So I was a little skeptical last year when they raised the issue, but my staff and I researched it independently and found out it was in fact, a scientifically recognized practice to put these types of plants in black plastic bags.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the questions.
Okay, Delegate Morgan.
Yeah, Doug, I'd also like to see the map because it does call out specifically St. Mary's College of Maryland would have to travel 60 miles or so to be able to dispose of their waste. So I'd like to see where that is at the end of the day, just map wise, if I could, please.
Okay.
Thanks.
Is that, Delegate Lehman, is there any way
Yes.
that you can share that?
Can we share that?
Any chance?
It's a Google.
Okay, hold on. I'm asking my staff. She's right here. I had a hard copy of the map in with my testimony. I know that's not going to suffice to hold it up for you all to see, but the map, hold on. We have it as a Google form. It was created by my intern. But again, we, engaged with the agencies and they knew enough, before we did the research to see where all these facilities were, they knew enough to say, we don't think this is a hardship at all. We can do this. Because I was prepared to put in qualifying language on, saying whatever it was tied to, somebody suggested in some composting law we have that, I don't know why the number was like 30 miles, or if they have to travel more than 30 miles to get to a facility like this, then that provision would be waived. And we didn't end up putting that language in because they said it wouldn't be necessary.
Sure. No, I was just
So-
thinking if we could,
Okay.
satisfy Delegate Morgan's concern by, showing the map, then we can conceivably move forward. Delegate Foley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I apologize, Delegate Lehman. I missed the hearing on this. I had to step
Oh,
out.
okay.
But we had this bill last year, didn't we? And what was the disposition of it last year on the committee? Did we vote for this bill? I think we
We
did.
did. Yes,
Okay.
the bill passed the committee last year with the amendment DNR requested on allowing, black plastic bags. But I did not seek to send the yard waste last year to specific facilities to avoid it going to landfills. That, was an idea that actually an environmentalist raised to me after the Senate just didn't act on the bill.
So the House passed the bill.
The House passed the bill. We passed an ENT, House passed the bill.
Minus the transporting of
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but
Right.
that piece is new. And again, I had expected, somebody had signed up, I thought, from DNR to testify. I was surprised when no one did. That might be because I'm guessing, I don't know, that possibly because Dylan Baylor now, well, as of tomorrow, he will be Delegate Dylan Baylor. He probably was the one that was going to testify. I'm guessing he did last year.
Yeah, he was signed up.
And he was signed up. He actually was signed up to speak today, but obviously that was not possible. And I was a little surprised though they didn't send anybody else. But they, assured both DNR and MDE that they did not see the requirement on disposal being a hardship of any kind.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I know it's getting late, would you, my staff can provide that map, to, I don't know how you want to.
Yeah, I mean, if you're saying it's not available, I guess right now to share on the Zoom. If not, well, let me ask you a question. You said that state agencies have said that
Yeah,
you know,
with
is
this new
delicate market.
language, they had no opposition to it.
Right, right. I mean, this does, obviously this does apply to locations all over the state, since it applies to state buildings or state highways. But your understanding was the requirement of the yard waste being disposed of at these different facilities from state agencies, that it's not going to create a hardship.
Right, and if it had, they would have, either, I would assume opposed the bill or requested, some kind of clarifying language or, an amendment to that. So I am looking at the map. I know you all can't see it. I'm trying to, it looks like where to compost, okay. So what we don't have, we have the total number of facilities. I don't think that this includes state, because remember, there are 3 different kinds of facilities that are spelled out in the bill so there are options. It's not only, that the yard waste would go to, say, a state facility that can create mulch or enrich soil, or a county, organics recycling. It's 3 different categories of organics recycling, natural wood waste recycling, or a state facility that on-site is creating mulch or enriched soil. And the map I have shows of the 24 counties in Maryland that 14 counties, I'm sorry, have facilities where this yard waste from state land could be taken. But that is not including, that does not include any state-owned facilities. I don't know how many of those there are where they're turning yard waste into mulch or enriched soil. It looks like from the map, yeah, the 14. Yeah, I don't know how to make this bigger, but in the western part of the state, I don't know what those arrows are for. I know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Delegate
can't.
Morgan,
I can circle back certainly with the 2 state agencies that were most engaged on this and ask how many more state facilities there are. I originally was specifying, my idea was to specify, I didn't know exactly how that would look, but to specify either, yard waste or combined yard waste and composting facilities. My goal was to do whatever it took to not have yard waste from state land going to municipal landfills, to add to municipal landfills. And it was, the bill drafter that came up with these 3 categories, and that include organics recycling, natural wood waste recycling. I wasn't even sure exactly what that was. And then state facilities that do mulching and enrich soil. So why don't I follow up with the subcommittee and get that total number? Because it seems to me this map that I have that was created by my intern probably isn't even inclusive of the 3 categories of facilities I've outlined.
okay. Delegate Morgan, which of I know you've asked for information about where St. Mary's College could take its yard waste under the bill. What would you prefer to do? I mean, normally I would say, since we passed a very similar bill, I'd say we could try to move it. if
Well,
you would like
just
to
go ahead,
hold it,
just go ahead and vote on it, because I know where the votes are gonna go. I can see how it went last year, so there's no reason to delay. I can always go down and see Delegate Lehman's map in the morning if I have to.
Yep.
okay.
Delegate Morgan, I can just say that it doesn't, I wasn't aware, you saying St. Mary's College in your district has a facility?
It does, I do not know of any recycling type of facility that you're describing in St. Mary's or Calvert County, put it that way.
Okay. Yeah, and I cannot speak to that, and I can't quite tell from this map. It looks like this map actually is only showing what I would consider like sort of traditional compost, either food or food in combination with yard waste. But it doesn't, I'm guessing it does not include this category in the bill that talks about natural wood waste recycling or these state facilities that do, that create mulch. So
Okay.
I'm sure this map would be even, would have more sites, but I'm happy to follow up, Mr. Chairman, with a more
Okay.
comprehensive map for the subcommittee to look at.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Delegate Foley, did you have your hand up or does it come down? It's okay. All right. Would anyone like to make a motion on this bill?
The
There's,
bill?
yeah, there's no amendments, right?
That's correct. Is that
It
right?
was just a request for a map to look at, but. So may I move the bill, Mr. Chair?
Yes. Is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of the bill say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
No,
Okay, so it's Delegates Morgan and Otto. Was there anyone else? Okay. All right, bill passes.
And I will still
Thank-
provide the map gladly, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Delegate Lehman. And with that, we are done for the evening. Yeah, I'm sure we'll be meeting regularly on Wednesday afternoons or evenings. So, whatever, we'll let you know it to the extent possible in advance, the day before, as to what the time is, but certainly put a general hold on this time period for future meetings. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.